Welcome to the Latter-day Freemen Podcast, a podcast dedicated to building a movement of Latter-day Saints united in defense of the principles of freedom and our inspired Constitution. I am your host, Jacob Hibbard, and I'm joined as I am each week by my fellow Freeman, by Jeremy Anderson. And this week we have a special guest with us, Aaron Bullen from Pro-Life Utah. Welcome, Jeremy, and welcome, Aaron. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
All right, Aaron. So like I said, you're from Pro-Life Utah. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about Pro-Life Utah and what it does in our state?
So I started volunteering with Pro-Life Utah about 3 years ago. I had actually just come off helping with an unsuccessful political campaign, and I decided that political campaigns were worth jack squat, and I didn't like them anymore, and I wanted to do something that was worthwhile. And I had actually become aware of Pro-Life Utah during that campaign. I was trying to promote my candidate as a more pro-life candidate than the other one. And so I, asked for their endorsement, and they said, "Oh, we're a 501c3, we're a charity, and so we can't do that." But anyway, I just found out when their meetings were, and I just showed up to a meeting and said, "Hey, I'm here, I'm ready. I wanna save babies." And they said, "Well, put yourself in charge of something," and I became one of the directors, and the rest is history. When you're a volunteer organization, people who are willing and competent are sometimes few and far between. And so you take what you can get. And apparently I was what they could get at the time.
That's awesome. So what is Pro-Life Utah's mission? What services or actions do you all take here in Utah?
So our mission is to help women to choose life. And by help, I mean we find abortion-minded women, and we want to take the fear that is driving them to consider taking the life of their child. We want to take that fear away so that they can feel, that motherly instinct, that they can know that God is there to help them through this situation, and that that He's the author of that pregnancy and her life. And so we do that in a myriad of ways, mostly just money. we tell them that we have money up front to help them with initial expenses, but we have people doing everything from housing to career development, writing resumes, finding a job, getting into school, everything at as low of a cost as we can find it, because it's our money, and we're not rolling in it, unfortunately. but we do have some generous donors, and we're able to provide these women with the necessities of life, at least until they are self-reliant, which is the goal.
That's amazing. And I do some part-time work myself for a pro-life organization called Let Them Live, and we do provide similar services. And one of the things that we've been able to find through research is that 73% of women who have abortions have them due to financial burden or concerns about finances. And I don't think enough people talk about that. Usually when we think about abortion, it's very much focused on the act and a little bit less on what are the driving motivators behind that decision. And I hope that tonight, as we have our discussion about the issue of abortion, we can kind of address some of the concerns, some of the ideas and issues driving the debate around this issue, and hopefully shed some of the gospel light on it as well. But just open up to both you and Jeremy, Aaron. Why do you think there is so much contention around the topic of abortion? When you actually look at the procedure itself and how it goes, it's pretty unpleasant. So you'd think that, you might imagine that that's a pretty straightforward thing that people would have opposed, but it is a hotly contested issue. Why do you guys feel that that's the case?
So for me, I feel like it's rooted in just the fundamental difference between men and women. When it comes to childbearing and child rearing, women naturally have a greater role in that, especially the childbearing portion of it. There's not really any way around that women are going to take the brunt of that responsibility. And it leads to a situation where women have kind of this extra responsibility in their life, and they sometimes watch men just walk away from it. So you have a lot of women that maybe get pregnant, and then the man that they got pregnant with walks out and doesn't help, doesn't take care of it. Or they have kids, and then, a year or two in, he walks away. And this has been going on since we've had society. And so there's this sense of, it's just not fair. I can't walk away from this child, and yet here he is walking away. And so when abortion comes on the scene, and you have this option to, hey, I can now have that same choice. It's this basic idea that, oh, well, it's just not fair for me to have this added responsibility. I think that's where a lot of it comes from.
That's a really interesting concept. And that's one of the main ways that I feel abortion has been sold, since it was something that occurred, that it is somehow an equalizer. Definitely different feminist movements have pushed that as something that will make them equal to a man. Obviously, we think about that as equal to a man in a very negative, terrible way, because none of us would strive to be a man like that. And, having dealt with many of these men myself, I can tell you that they won't let me interact with them directly, because they know how frustrated I am with them for being deadbeat dads. And so I don't need to give them a scolding. But yeah, I think some of these arguments drive a wedge, and one of them is that of equality. Another one might be that of, bodily autonomy, that, I created this child in my womb. I have control over it, and whether or not my body, provides for this child, and therefore I have every right to eliminate this child, or what sometimes is referred to, as a clump of cells, which obviously makes it, easier for them to justify it. But that of equality, and that of I should be able to, control what my body is doing. I think those are some of the main things that make it very contentious. If you grab hold of one of those principles, then it's hard to let them go, just as it's hard for us to let go of some of the, principles on the other side of thou shalt not kill. And it's hard for us to get around that. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of the controversy around abortion comes to the fact that the issue of abortion itself strikes to the heart of some very core, key foundational principles. And where you end up on that principle will shape your view on abortion. And so, like, the question of what is life? What are rights? The concept and value of innocent life or body autonomy, like, these are all such core, basic ideas, and abortion touches them. And I think that when you see an issue so intimately touch those issues, such as, like I said, the beginning of life, the value of life, what is murder, what is not murder, what do we have the rights to do with our bodies, and these intimate parts of our lives, because it's so foundational, it can't help but be contentious and controversial. Because where you end up on those key questions leads to a lot of different potentially dramatically different areas or different outcomes. Let's quickly touch on what is the church and the gospel perspective on the issue of abortion. And a quote that stuck out to me in 2018 in his talk, Truth and the Plan, President Oaks, then Elder Oaks, said, "Mortal life is sacred to us. Our commitment to God's plan requires us to oppose abortion." President Nelson in 1985, when he was Elder Nelson, said, "Now, as a servant of the Lord, I dutifully warn those who advocate and practice abortion that they incur the wrath of Almighty God, who declared, if men hurt a woman with child so that her fruit depart from her, he shall be surely punished. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has consistently opposed the practice of abortion. 100 years ago, the First Presidency wrote, and we again take this opportunity of warning the Latter-day Saints against those practices of foeticide and infanticide." Early in his presidency, our beloved president, Spencer W. Kimball, said, "We decry abortions and ask our people to refrain from the serious transgression." You can also find other quotes from like President Hinckley calling abortion an evil that's stark and real and repugnant. So it's very much condemning. So clearly, I think we all agree the church has a very strong opposition to abortion per se, with potential exceptions, but not automatic exemptions in any way. So having established that as a baseline, we wanted to look at some of the arguments that are made in today's society about abortion and take the opportunity to respond to them from a gospel perspective. And to kind of begin that, to start that off, we wanted to listen to a valedictorian speech from Lake Highlands High School in Texas. The valedictorian, her name is Paxton Smith, and she took the opportunity at her graduation when she was addressing her classmates to touch on the issue of abortion. And we're going to take the opportunity to let you all listen with us, and then we're going to react or respond. But let's listen now to Paxton's speech.
As we leave high school, we need to make our voices heard. Today, I was going to talk about TV and media and content because it's something that's very important to me. However, under light of recent events, it feels wrong to talk about anything but what is currently affecting me and millions of other women in the state. Recently, the heartbeat bill was passed in Texas. Starting in September, there will be a ban on abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy, regardless of whether the pregnancy was a result of rape or incest. 6 weeks. That's all women get. And so before they realize, most of them don't realize that they're pregnant by 6 weeks. So before they have a chance to decide if they are emotionally, physically, and financially stable enough to carry out a full-term pregnancy, before they have the chance to decide if they can take on the responsibility of bringing another human being into the world, that decision is made for them by a stranger. A decision that will affect the rest of their lives is made by a stranger. I have dreams and hopes and ambitions. Every girl graduating today does. And we have spent our entire lives working towards our future. And without our input and without our consent, our control over that future has been stripped away from us. I am terrified that if my contraceptives fail, I am terrified that if I am raped, then my hopes and aspirations and dreams and efforts for my future will no longer matter. I hope that you can feel how gut-wrenching that is. I hope you can feel how dehumanizing it is to have the autonomy over your own body taken away from you. And I'm talking about this today, on a day as important as this. On a day honoring 12 years of hard academic work, on a day where we are all gathered together, on a day where you are most inclined to listen to a voice like mine, a woman's voice, to tell you that this is a problem, and it's a problem that cannot wait. And I cannot give up this platform to promote complacency and peace when there is a war on my body and a war on my rights. A war on the rights of your mothers, a war on the rights of your sisters, a war on the rights of your daughters. We cannot stay silent. Thank you.
Your reaction to Paxton's valedictorian speech.
I have a quote from Elder Anderson. He says, "For us, these decisions go well beyond just what a person wants for his or her own life." For me, that is the biggest issue, I guess, difference between the pro-life and the pro-choice proponents is when we talk about life, it's much more than just the life that's going on right now in mortality. It's just as important the things that happened before we came to Earth and the things that are going to happen after we come to Earth. And so I feel like Paxton is really channeling both of the reasons that Aaron gave earlier for the pro-choice platform of this idea of unfairness. It's not fair that I don't get to make a decision about my future and somebody else is going to make it for me. And also this idea of bodily autonomy and, I have control over my body and I get to decide. And it goes back to a lack of understanding the plan of salvation.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you there. And I think where faith really helps us is the perspective that life is of infinite value and that it comes to us from God, from our divine creator. That really helps us value every single life, not only our own, and knowing, the potential of each one of those lives and our own life, that, we may dwell with God in the celestial kingdom, and that everyone else has that potential too. That also drives us to, protect life. To, I guess, address some of, her arguments, it's really quite sad as you listen to it, because she has been made to believe that her reaching her dreams and her full potential is based on the possibility of her being able to kill a child that she created. And that is very sad. It's something that we in the pro-life movement need to fight against, because that's absolutely not true. Even if a woman is pregnant unexpectedly, I know that they can reach their full potential in their dreams, because I've seen it. I've seen it as women get the help of Pro-Life Utah, and I've seen it just, at a larger scale. You hear the stories after the fact, but of people succeeding, in spite of having these unexpected pregnancies. And, she mentioned having control over her future, that she has this loss of control over her future, which is, I feel like, a lie that society tells us, that your future is basically over if you conceive a child. If you're a girl, especially a young girl, that you will have to drop out of college. Not true. That you will not be able to reach, your aspirations career-wise. Not true. Will it make it, I guess, more, quote unquote difficult? Yes, but it will also make your life infinitely more fulfilling than your life would have been otherwise. I also think of the concept of control in the aspect that we do control our actions. And I think this is a big part of what we all believe, is that she talked about her contraception, and if it fails, then she might get pregnant, or, unfortunately, often people decide not to use, contraception and have an unexpected pregnancy that way. But I feel like every time we choose to engage in the act of procreation, that creating a new life is possible. And I think that realizing that is very important. And in today's society, we tell people that they actually can have consequence-free sexual relationships with other people, that sexual relationships are not for making children, they're only for your own personal fulfillment, and that you should be able to engage in that activity as much as you want, whenever you want, without expecting to ever have a pregnancy, which it's not true. I think teaching people that, contraception does fail, a percentage of the time, and it will always be that way, and that that you just need to take responsibility every time that you do something that can create a baby, that you should expect that it will, and be ready to take that into your life. I think, something else she said is, that most women only realize they're, pregnant, that they don't realize they're pregnant at 6 weeks. I just quickly looked that up, that actually most women do realize they're pregnant between 4 and 7 weeks. So that most women would know that they're pregnant actually before that heartbeat bill goes into effect. But that's not really the right question that we should be asking. The right question is, regardless of, who realizes what when, is what should the law be in regards to taking the life of an unborn child, and is it morally correct or is it morally wrong?
I really love what you said about just taking responsibility for that possibility whenever you engage in the act of procreation. President Nelson, in a talk in 2008, he talked about it and made the analogy to an astronaut taking off in a rocket ship. And he said, once you've taken off in that rocket ship, you can't get off. But you have all the choices beforehand during the preparation stages to not jump on the rocket ship. And that's a choice that you make. So yeah, thank you. That was well articulated.
Yeah, I thought that Paxton, in her comments, made several of the kind of common arguments that you hear, I think, in the discussion around abortion. And before we started the podcast, we kind of made a list of a few that we wanted to hit on. And one of the more prominent ones that she made that I caught on was this idea of bodily autonomy, and that any sort of restriction on abortion is an affront to a woman's bodily autonomy. Now, I believe that this is a fallacious or a bad argument, or an accurate argument, due to the fact that abortion involves two individuals and two bodies. When you perform an abortion, you're doing that on another individual who has different DNA than you. That is completely and totally unique. There's no other DNA like it anywhere else in the world. It's completely different from your body. And so abortion doesn't infringe on your bodily autonomy, but it infringes on the bodily autonomy of the child who's being aborted. And Elder Nelson kind of echoes this argument or this line of thinking in his talk that he gave Reverence for Life in 1985, when he said, "The woman's choice for her own body does not validate choice for the body of another. The expression terminate the pregnancy applies literally only to the woman. The consequence of terminating the fetus therein involves the body and very life of another. These two individuals have separate brains, separate hearts, and separate circulatory systems. To pretend that there is no child and no life there, and no life there is to deny reality. Scripture declares that the life of the flesh is the blood. Abortion sheds that innocent blood. So, to me, this idea that somehow by preventing an abortion, we are taking away your right to make decisions about your own body is wrong, because your body's not the body that's getting aborted.
Yeah, and I think that's really the thought that most of us go to when we hear my body, my choice, is we think, actually, there's another body there, and it's not getting a choice in the matter, and it certainly doesn't want to die. If we could ask the child if it wants to live, most living, things want to stay alive. That being said, I have heard, people say that counter argument is not, effective, because often women are not saying, that there's no body there, that there's no other body being acted upon, but they believe that because that other body is reliant on them for nutrition and for development, for life itself, at least until we have artificial wombs, then they'll have to get another argument. But that they have the right to take the life from that thing that is wholly dependent on them. That kind of, spurs off into many different arguments on whether or not you are at an obligation to provide for somebody who is dependent on you for life. That's certainly the case with children who are already been born, who are, out of the mother's womb. These children are also fully dependent on us for life. Oftentimes well into their teenage years, they could not survive without somebody taking care of them. But just that physical attachment, adds another layer of the argument. But yeah, that's definitely another part of the bodily autonomy argument, is that you shouldn't be forced to provide for anything. The counter argument is that no one's forcing you. You chose to do that, right? You chose the potential for having to provide for that child and keep it alive much earlier, right? It's not so much about the freedom of choice, because you had every freedom of choice. You made that choice, and this is what resulted from that.
Yeah, and I think the idea that because something is dependent on you, have the choice to cut that off. I mean, for the first years of life after birth, children are completely dependent on you for survival. And as to whether children have any claim on you, the Family Proclamation declares that children are entitled to birth within the bounds of matrimony and to be reared by a father and a mother who honor marital vows with complete fidelity. And so we believe in our theology that children do have a claim on their parents for the necessities of life, and that parents do have a duty then to tend and take care of, to nurture their children. And so I think that's another way that the gospel and the knowledge that we have as Latter-day Saints responds to some of the ideas that are discussed in society. Another argument that you often see is that, especially this gets thrown, I think, at, and is a persuasive argument or a difficult one to respond to sometimes as Latter-day Saints, is that, we believe in agency, we believe in the freedom of choice, we believe in individual rights. Who are we then to determine or deny a woman her right to make a choice in this circumstance? Doesn't that mean that we're anti-agency? Satan was anti-agency. Isn't pro-life or denying someone the opportunity or quote unquote right to an abortion anti-agency, just like Satan's plan was? How do we as Latter-day Saints respond to that, Jeremy?
So for me, that question it goes back to the law, and the purpose of the law is to protect people's rights. And the rights that we protect specifically are the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to property. And well, let me toss that to Aaron. Do you have any thoughts, Aaron?
Well, yeah. I mean, you were kind of addressing it from, a secular perspective, that, we have to protect somebody's right to life so that they have the right to choose, right? That these rights are, in conflict with one another. If, Jacob is talking at my face and I think what he's saying is abhorrent and I would like him to cease to exist, I have the right to make a choice in that situation. And, but if, I choose to incinerate him, that removes his choice from the situation. I can't do anything, unilaterally to maintain my liberty. You're not at liberty to take away somebody else's rights to live or to continue to make choices themselves. So, from a natural law perspective, that makes sense. But also, when we talk about agency, we also talk about the fact that there are consequences from the choices that we make. Going back all the way in the Bible to where we have Cain and Abel and the situation of murder that arose. That is something that is a choice that God did not condone and that had to be punished by God. That choice to take away somebody else's life, the choice to take away, other people's property. Those are things that we believe in stopping, not only in a religious sense, but, in a secular legal sense as well.
Yeah, agency has never meant the right to infringe on the rights of others or to deprive someone else of their agency. Thomas Jefferson, from a secular source, talks about rightful liberty as unobstructed action checked by the equal rights of others. And we also have general authorities of the church who've talked about how agency is the right to freely act so long as you're not infringing on the rights of others. And so the concept that you being prevented from killing an innocent child is violating your rights or your freedom to choose is a complete misunderstanding of what those rights mean. Yes, we do have the right to use force in self-defense of someone who's threatening us with arbitrary, intrusive physical force, but an innocent child is not doing that. And so the use of force, which was what abortion is a immoral use of violence or immoral use of force. And we know from Section 132 of the Doctrine and Covenants that governments exist, and no government can exist in peace except such laws are framed and held inviolate as will secure to each the protection of life. And so while some might say, well, this is big government infringing on my way to live my life or intruding on the most private aspects of my life. Well, government exists to secure rights of all people who are under its jurisdiction. And that per child in your womb is a person, and it has rights. And government is as much the common agent of that unborn child to secure its rights as it is yours. And so when you take an action that would infringe on its right to life, government is morally justified and is obligated to interfere and to secure the rights of the child. And we get, like I said, that comes from the Doctrine and Covenants, Section 132, and from our understanding that the Founding Fathers and the Declaration of Independence outline for the proper role of government and what rights mean when we talk about rights and what freedom is when we talk about liberty.
So just a follow up to that, it makes me think, like, could, these humans really exist that think it's okay to, take away somebody else's life in the interest of agency or choice? And I think, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, that, maybe part of the problem is they do not view it as a life, right? They don't view the act of abortion as taking away the life of an innocent child the way that we do. And so really that's kind of a basis that we need to develop with people as we talk about this, that everything I believe is because I know, I don't just believe, but scientifically I know that is another living human being, and that human being will never exist again. As you said, that DNA is unique. It's never existed before. That means it's not coming back magically if that life is taken. At least not with the same body makeup or DNA. It's not the same person, right? And so we do need to establish that beforehand.
Well, I think we've addressed those two arguments pretty well. But what can we as Latter-day Saints who believe in the sanctity of life do to decrease abortions? We live in a Roe v. Wade world right now. So to kind of give us, our listeners and ourselves, a little bit of hope or something that we can do about this issue, what is it that we as Latter-day Saints can do about it to decrease abortion?
Well, being the director of Pro-Life Utah, like I am, one of the directors, I would say that we can support women who are in these situations. One of the, well, it's not really an argument for abortion, but one of the things that comes up often, as I'm having these discussions, is that I hate women, that I think women who get abortions are murderers, and that I think they're going to hell, and I'm just here to condemn them. Well, turns out condemning other people's choices and sins is not super effective. It doesn't really, provide any value except maybe preventative for other people to not make that choice. But the president of Pro-Life Utah is a post-abortive woman. She is acutely aware of the trauma that women go through from abortion, the lies they're told to convince them that abortion is okay. She was not religious growing up, but she was told that, her baby is no bigger than the tip of a ballpoint pen at 12 weeks. If you're familiar with child development, that is very, very false. At least a couple inches and fully formed limbs at that point. It's definitely a little child. And she realized that when she had her own child and got an ultrasound at 12 weeks. So that being said, I am in awe of the women who choose to be brave and to save their child from the fate of abortion, which is death. And it's not always easy. It's not easy, even if they choose to place for adoption, which kind of surprisingly, most of our abortion-minded women don't choose to do. You would think that, they've already chosen that, it's impossible for them to do this. That's why they're considering abortion. As soon as you take that initial fear away, they actually, most of them, 9 times out of 10 choose to keep their child, at least in my experience. But, adoption's hard because you carried that child, you have the emotional attachment to it, but it is something that brings to mind the word heroes. I think these women are my heroes. And if we help them financially and emotionally, I think that's the right thing to do. And in terms of what we can do as members of the church, I gave a talk on abortion recently. That was the bishop's fault for giving me carte blanche on what I got to speak on. I'm like, okay, well, I'm choosing abortion anyway. And I just called on everybody to be more understanding and accepting. And, we shouldn't, or at least we should try to not have negative reactions when there is an unwed mother who is coming to church. We need her to know that she is wanted there, that she is a daughter of God, and that we love her. And the response shouldn't be what happened. It should be congratulations. You're carrying a child. You're carrying another son or daughter of God. And really, she needs to know what a positive thing that is. While it is going to be very difficult, as any of us parents are acutely aware of, she needs to be accepted. People need to realize that sins that are outwardly visible are, not necessarily worse than sins that are not visible to others. And we need to bring the sinner in to our congregations, because we're all sinners, and that's why the sacrament exists. We wouldn't be taking the sacrament if we weren't all sinning day after day. So I guess those are my thoughts on it, that we need to help each other, and we need to reach out and love and support and do as much as we can to help people in these difficult situations, because it's a matter of life or death.
One of the things, Aaron, that I feel like you mentioned in your comments just there, say congratulations. I almost feel like there's a mindset shift that we could apply even to ourselves, and certainly more generally in the church, to really value children and to understand the eternal value of that. That this idea that it's unfair for women to carry this, this quote unquote burden of childbearing and child rearing, at its roots, it comes down to it's harder for women to participate economically, to earn prestige, to earn money, to participate politically if they're saddled with this burden. And it completely ignores the fact that eternal rewards far outweigh the eternal rewards of having children far outweigh the mortal rewards of making money and being popular and going after those worldly things. And even in this life, there's joy that comes out of those relationships that you just can't get any other way. And so if we can center that in our own worldview and share that with others, I feel like that could be one way to combat this war on the unborn, or war on the innocent, as President Nelson talks about it.
Well, I'll be the one person to bring politics into it. I think that everything you guys said is absolutely true. I don't think that precludes pushing for policies at our state and federal level that would change abortion laws. But like the concept of limited government puts a greater burden on us as individuals to be more self-reliant and to handle most of the problems in society, as we push for policies that limit access to abortion, I think the burden then that comes upon us, especially as members of the church, like both of you said, to lift the hands that hang down and step in there and create an environment and a society, and to have an institution like the church where people don't feel the need to have an abortion. Like I shared at the beginning of the podcast, 73% of abortions that are performed are because women feel financially burdened to the point that they feel like they can't have the baby. Often they're pressured by family members or the father of the child as well. And with the work that the organization I work with Let Them Live, a lot of the moms that we work with are being coerced by their family members or by the father of the child to get an abortion. They're getting kicked out of their homes. They're being threatened with this and that if they don't abort the baby. And so we as a society have to step up we as a church, we as members and neighbors have to, like Aaron said, not judge, but to reach out the arm of fellowship and love and take that pressure from relieve and lift that burden. If we do that, what happens to whether Roe v. Wade exists or not, kind of starts to become irrelevant, because we're creating a place where there's no demand. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't get rid of Roe v. Wade, but that's the fight. That's the real battle. That's the eternal battle, is constantly trying to do our part so that our sisters who are facing anything from financial troubles to the horrors of incest and rape don't feel the need to have an abortion. And there's a lot of great ways that we can do that. You can get involved with groups like Pro-Life Utah. You can get involved with organizations like Let Them Live. And then also just in your own community, or sometimes just as simple as like what Aaron said, the smile, the embrace, the fellowship, the love that Christ would have for that individual, and being an expression of that in our own communities and in our own wards and branches. Well, we've had a really good discussion. I really want to thank both Jeremy and especially Aaron for coming on tonight to talk about this important issue. Aaron, if individuals in Utah who are listening want to get involved with Pro-Life Utah, where can they do that, and what can they do?
So thanks for asking, Jacob. Probably the most effective way to get involved is if you go to prolifeutah.org, and you actually would need to scroll down quite a bit, and I give you specific instructions because people won't find it immediately, so they'll give up. But you scroll down past a few videos. Obviously, our website guys volunteer, but it says stay current on pro-life bills. Something I didn't mention is we also lobby for pro-life legislation. Speaking of politics, but that will actually get you on our email list, which talks about when we do have our meetings, which are just open to everybody. You can come on in and do as much as your heart desires. You can be, one of the people in charge of the organization, like me, if you so decide, out of the blue. And there's another blank that just says receive text notifications. And if you put that in there, we'll give you alerts when there's, pro-life legislation, or if we need you to contact your, state representative, or when we're having events to help fundraise for the cause. That includes baby showers for the women that we're sponsoring and that we're helping and finding. So that's probably the main thing that you can do to get involved. And right on Pro-Life Utah, there's a number. It says if you need help, you can call that number. You can also just call that number because it's, our executive director, Deanna, and it's just a 24/7 hotline. But you can ask her, what ways that you can get involved in the organization, and what we need help with. We have an ultrasound van in front of Planned Parenthood, and keeping that staffed with sidewalk advocates to, help direct women for a free ultrasound is something that we've been working on recently. There's a lot of different things to do. If you're new to activism or volunteering, rest assured, I just kind of made up my own job, and it's worked out fantastically. And you are needed, and these babies need you.
Thank you, Aaron. And like he said, pro-life activism doesn't mean necessarily grabbing a picket sign and going down and chanting in front of Planned Parenthood. The most powerful activism we can do is like we've been talking about, the arm of fellowship and the different ways that we can serve those around us. Well, for those of you who've made it to the end, be sure to like and share this episode on whatever platform you're listening, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen. And we really do appreciate your viewership, you being with us, being a part of our organization, part of our podcast. And if you have any comments or suggestions for us, you can leave us a message on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. We're active on all those platforms. And of course, you can email us directly at latterdayfreeman76@gmail.com. For Aaron and for Jeremy, it has been a wonderful night, and we will see you all next week.